Thank you, no pressure, no pressure. But I'm really delighted to be here. Thank you to the UDECO project to inviting me to this conference, which is absolutely interesting, and I look forward to hear all the presentations today. I was especially waiting to hear how we can go to Mars, but I think also the presentation we just heard was really interesting and providing a framework for what I'm going to say. I've been working on data innovation and research on the data market for the last few years, like many other of my IDC colleagues. And what I'm going to share with you today is some fresh data we've been developing for the European Commission on the European data market and the European data economy, but also some of the trends and data that my colleagues in IDC have been putting together about this new transition. My dear, we are living in an age of transition, as Adam said to Eve a long time ago. So I think we are always in an age of transition. But it's true that today we are living in something which is even more than it used to be. Now, let's see if I can work this. Okay. What we know is that there is digital disruption ahead. Even if the pace of innovation has been relentless in the last years, we are now moving into this new wave of transition. IDC tracks IT spending worldwide. We've been doing this for the last 50 years. And we see now that traditional IT spending on networks, IT office systems is declining, while at the same time, the second platform, what we call the big data, cloud, mobile, and social technologies combination is growing. But what is really ramping up is spending on Internet of Things, IoT, cognitive systems, artificial intelligence moved into real apps and services, robotics, and this is growing at twice the speed as the rest. So this is what is really happening. And are we in the perfect storm? A perfect storm is a combination of factors which together change a situation, shape the situation. And we've always had data in our world, but today it's really changed. There has been a change of level and intensity. It's not only that we see the data, we are living in a virtual world where suddenly all the information about what we do and everywhere we go is tracked, can be measured, can be seen, can be elaborated. But we also have algorithms, as it was just explained a bit before, how algorithms are shaping our world because they are actually driving a number of decisions and activities that before were decided by human beings. And then there is cloud computing, which is suddenly becoming really mainstream. We've been talking about cloud for many years, but now you hear the word platform everywhere, and it's cloud platforms, platforms on the cloud, a new ecosystem. And finally, we are seeing opportunities for extracting value from data, and this is the focus of my presentation. I will be talking about how businesses especially can extract value from data. Actually, I want to ask all of you, if you are from an organization or a business, are you aware, how many of you have been looking at the value of your data? Do you know your data? Do you know how much it could be valuable as an asset? Can you raise your hands? A few of you, but really few. We know because we see that about 55% of European organizations are in the stage of using data, which are data explorers, digital explorers, we call them in the digital transformation journey. And we also have a lot of new regulation and data governance issues. So welcome in the world where Google knows more about you than you do. But we have the global data protection regulation. We are safe. But, privacy is not always what it seems to be. It's true that privacy consensus sometimes is we don't really know what we're going to do, but we want your consensus about it. But this doesn't change the fact that digital transformation, which is the way in which organizations are moving their processes and their services into the digital age, is expected to increase and reach $1.7 trillion in the next years. And this is almost 40% increase from 2017. This is a huge number. And why? Because we see a huge number of use cases. So we see from 5 to 80% growth rate in the last few years, because companies are experimenting and companies are checking out. It goes from everything from the omni-channel experiences in commerce, where you combine knowledge of customers and knowledge of companies in a number of channels, to the famous automotive as self-driving cars. So even if we have the data deluge, even if we maybe don't control so much of our personal data, we'll have all these, for example, driverless cars who will bring to us a lot of benefits. Well, maybe we are not really there already. I love Teslas, but apparently just last week, a Tesla car, which was self-driving in autopilot, crashed on a stopped fire truck. Why? Well, I read this because it was interesting. Apparently, they have radar sensors, but radar sensors see everything. So the software excludes from what the car reacts to all the objects which are not moving. So there is a bug. Basically, if a self-driving car, like if the Tesla car, does not have a driver stopping it, if there is something which doesn't move on the road, like a parked car, it will not break. So they are developing another technology with new sensors, but it's not ready yet, but we'll get there. But please don't be carried away too much by hype, because there is still a long way to go, and many organizations are still struggling with this. So it's true that data is at the center of the new digital transformation economy, and already today almost half of companies understand this. And this is, in a couple of years, it's growing to more than 70%. So everybody agrees, data is the focus in order to make your process digital, in order to adopt technology, in order to improve governance, and you need to find digital talent to manage data. So this is what the data-driven organization means. We expect that now we are getting into the phase in which companies are starting to extract value from their data, to monetize their data. We will see that almost in a few years, 50% of large organizations will be generating data as a service revenues from the sale of data. And this will also be combined with artificial intelligence and AI. The cognitive capabilities are absolutely necessary in order to extract knowledge from the data you collect, especially in the case of IoT. A few weeks, before Christmas, there was the European Global Data Value Forum in Versailles, run by the European Commission, and Siemens made a presentation on Industry 4.0, and it was all about how you can combine data with cognitive in order to implement Industry 4.0. So this is clearly a very important driver. And the project who's hosting us has just run a survey, and you can see why companies use third-party data, because the key of all this is also about combining your own data as a company, as an organization, with other people's data. And there are a number of reasons, lower cost, but especially quality, precision, validity, understanding more. And this is where the value also comes from. So the concept of the platform that you keep hearing is about collaboration, building an ecosystem, and combining data in such a way that you can extract value. What are the examples we start seeing? Well, for example, again, automotive sector. It's not only self-driving cars, it's also using data and analytics to understand correlation in the data which predict failures. Volvo is investing a lot because it has decided that cars should not crash. This has always been a principle of Volvo culture, and now they're using analytics to do it. Aviva is insurance. What they are doing, they are combining a data and analytics platform to deliver risk management solutions so they can see what is the behavior of the safest drivers, for example, and provide tailored services to companies. So when we talk about driving as a service, we mean also this kind of ideas. But I think e-commerce is even more interesting. Zalando is not only using analytics to know their customers. I mean, e-commerce is about using data on your customers, but they're also trying to forecast fashion trends. They want to collect their purchases of their customers with fashion trends, and they plan to resell this customer profiling to other companies in time. So it's a bit like the airlines when they started selling information about flights, and suddenly they got more money out of information rather than flying planes. I don't think Zalando will start making more money from data than from selling clothes soon, but it's going to be a very important source of revenue. And this is another interesting example. Transport from London. I think all of you have been to London. All of you have seen the fantastic London transportation systems with all its problems. Transport from London is one of the largest data providers in Europe. They run the tube, they run the bus, they run the regional trains. They have a lot of data. It's all shared. It's open data. And it's an absolutely very, very relevant source of data. But what they want is to make this also a source of revenues. They plan to do so because they're installing IoT sensors, and they plan to combine commuter and transport data with pollution data. They're already starting to do so. They're starting to combine a number of data together to provide value added by filtering, managing, elaborating it, adding knowledge, and then resell this. So the point is not that the company should not share data in an open way, but if they add something, if there is value added, then it has to have some return on this. And this is really we need to keep a watch on Transport for London. It's really interesting, unless they are, sidetracked by Brexit, but let's hope not. So, in all this, we have been building in the last few years a model on measuring the European data market and the European data economy to try to understand where this value is bringing us. This is a model which looks at a complete view of demand and supply. There are a number of indicators on the data market value, on the number of data companies on the supply side, data users who are the data-driven companies we were talking about. We look at their revenues, we look at the number of data professionals, and we provide scenarios. And as I was anticipating, we will deliver actually on Friday the new data forecast to 2025, and I'm anticipating it to all of you. But please, this is draft data because it's not approved yet. So you get a peek, but remember that this is a very complex model. So the first thing I want to talk about is the data market value. The data market is the combination of the revenues from all the products and services based on data and the data technologies. This is moving from approximately 50 billion euros in 2017 in the European Union 27, because we are moving to Brexit, we didn't consider the UK here, and is expected to improve to go to 60 billion by 2020. To 2025, we expect it to double in value. And of course, there are uncertainties, so we have three scenarios, from a baseline which is more driven by the current trends to what could possibly go better or worse. In the challenge scenario, for example, I'll talk about this, we have threats from socio-political crisis as well as difficulty of the economy to adopt this innovation. And the range of values goes from 70 to 110 euro billion of value. So this is a market which is still growing faster than normal mature market and has a very high profile. And what is happening in Hungary? Okay, please consider this, don't look at the decimals if you want, but I think there is something wrong in the numbers have too many decimals, but okay, more or less, we see the Hungary market value around 435 million euros in 2017, growing to 500 million euros in 2020, and potentially growing between 700 and 900, almost 1 billion euros by the next year. And what is interesting is the growth rate, because, sorry, the percentages are not well shown here, but the percentage of growth compared to the average EU27 in Hungary is faster. So there is faster growth both now and perspective in the next scenarios. So the situation in Hungary, from what I hear, is that there is interest, and especially Industry 4.0 could be an opportunity for Hungary to drive this data-driven growth. And what about the data users? Data users are those enterprises who focus strategically on extracting value from data. We have estimated how many of them there are. We believe that about 5.8% of the overall universe of companies today are data users. And who are they? They are from financial services, for example, and they do the kind of things we saw Aviva doing. They are from manufacturing, they're from the public sector. So they are really exploiting this value. The data users are the most advanced companies in every industry. At the moment, there is a higher number of them in manufacturing, which is logic because it is also one of the leading sectors. And finance is, of course, undergoing the fintech revolution, so this is clear, but professional services is also growing very fast. And you can see we have data about what is the percentage of the intensity of their the presence of data workers on employment by industry, and you can see that finance, ICT, and utilities lead the way, but there are a number of industries where this is growing. For example, in retail and wholesale, the potential is still high because only 3% of employment is data professionals, data workers, who are workers whose main job is dealing with data. So we're not talking about engineers or statisticians only. We are also talking about marketing managers dealing with the CRM data. Finally, if you look at the intensity of data users, so how fast these sectors are evolving, again, you see that ICT and finance are leading. So there is about a percentage of 10% of companies in their sectors who are already pioneers, data users. And the other sectors are behind, especially, as you can see, education and the public sector. But there, the potential is very high. But we have systemic problems in innovation because, as you saw, it's an ecosystem issue. It's not a simple individual company decision issue. But let's go to the data economy. We are not looking only at the data market, meaning what companies earn from data innovation. The business growth generated by the data market, which we call the direct impacts on the economy, generates additional revenues and profits for the user companies. So we are talking about the Avivas, the Volvos, who make money out of the services they make for their customers. And these are the indirect impacts. And finally, because of this additional economic vitality, you have more people with more wages, consumption, spending. This is called the Keynesian multiplier, and it's induced impact. The sum of these impacts is what we call the data economy. In our model, we try to estimate these impacts, and it's quite a big multiplier. So what could happen with the European data economy? We expect that in the baseline scenario, by 2025, the data economy will reach 4% of the European GDP, which is 544 billion euros. This is quite a number. But it could be as high as 5.4% of GDP, over 700 billions. Or it could be lower, half as much, 2.9 of GDP and 376 billion. How this will happen? It's a combination of factors: private initiative, policy, external factors. In the baseline scenario, what we see is continuing on this positive development path with a strong supply push by the data industry. The high growth scenario will come from maximizing data users' benefits. This is a scenario where we can see also medium and small companies entering the data market faster than expected. We see the hyper-connected society, we see the high data sharing, despite all the problems that we can have. We see successful policies like the digital single market. And because the data market and the data economy have very strong scale effects, it means the bigger you are, the more benefits you get. A country like Hungary, which is a relatively small country, has to benefit a lot from the digital single market, for example, and can have, especially if it can participate to the European ecosystem rather than go to it alone. And finally, in the challenge scenario, A fragmented market, weak demand, low data sharing. If companies cannot adopt, this is the challenge that the previous speaker was talking about, the challenge which can be won but can be lost. Unless we are able to build this ecosystem in Europe, then we may fall into the challenge scenario that there will still be growth, there will still be value, but much less than the potential. What are the real multipliers? What is interesting is that it's more than proportional. For every euro spent or gained in the data market, you have between 4 to 6 euros in the data economy of indirect and induced impacts. And this is typical of innovation like ICT, which help to multiply the value as it goes down the value chain. So this is a really key concept for the data economy. So what should you do? As an enterprise, as an organization, know your data. Look at your data as assets. Prepare to monetize them. How? Just understand their value. How can it be shared? How it can be monetized? It doesn't mean that you need to protect it, because many companies don't want to share their data because they're afraid to lose it. Don't be afraid. Break up data silos. I'm sure that many companies here have data on, for example, invoicing, how much customers pay, then they have data on maintenance, how much times you have to provide the service to a company. Often they're not combined. You need to combine data. You need to have a seamless flow of data in your company as well as outside your company. Watch out for artificial intelligence, cognitive, IoT. These are all new opportunities, but you must invest in them and understand them. We were talking about ownership and access. It's true that access is more important, but also ownership is very important. I mean, in terms, not traditional terms, but in terms who gets access, in terms of controls the flows of data. This is a very important issue. For example, in the United States, in the agriculture sector, which is one which is undergoing a very important transformation using data towards precision agriculture, there is a big battle between farmers and the tractor manufacturers, because the new tractors, they collect a lot of data and they're connected with satellites about the field's characteristics and everything. And they want the data. They say that data is collected by their machines, so they own the data. And the farmers say, but this is about my field. I want to have access. I want to have control of this data. So these are new issues. And for example, The Economist last week made a cover on how to control the big data platforms like Facebook, Google, because now there is a new antitrust issue. These platforms are too powerful. We need to think of a new context, a new way in which we can redistribute the benefits and the value from this data. And finally, prepare for the global data protection regulation as an opportunity. IDC has done some analysis of this, and we see that many companies are not prepared. You know that it will go into action in a couple of months. Many companies are just preparing to comply, basically, but very few are looking at it as an opportunity in order to keep control of their data and exploit data. And I think there are opportunities in GDPR for this. I know that in the US there is a movement for a human-centered data use, which looks at Europe as a leader in this area, because we are the first to be concerned about how to manage this kind of data without losing control, because network effects and scale-up effects, winner-takes-all effects, if they're not controlled, they really concentrate too much power and money in a few hands. And you can consult UDECO, because this project, which is hosting us today, has a lot of interesting hints for companies who are trying to get into the data economy. Look at their website, recommendations, and a European data economy model, something to think on, and an observatory which will give you some hints of what is going to go. So what we know is this is an extraordinary opportunity. Don't miss it, because too many companies are, wondering what to do, where to start. Just do it. Go ahead and do it. Thank you. If you want the European data market data, you can find it at this website, datalandscape.eu, or you can contact me, as you were saying. Thank you again.